Hi everyone, it's Mandy here, and I'm so happy today. I'm here with my colleague Becky, who's over in the States, and Becky's been amazing. Some of you that have been following me, we've been talking about the hurricanes and cyclones in Bahamas, and Becky's at our US office, and she's been organising loads of stuff. She's got a finger on the pulse, and she's been working with NV Pacific Cove and Yacht Aid, and is just a real inspiration. And that's why I wanted to talk to someone that knows what's going on, and so we can get some insight into the situation and how we can help in our communities as well. So, Becky, first of all, introduce yourself. Who are you?
I'm good. Good to see you guys.
And just so everyone knows who you are, do you want to just give them a little bit of background to who you are and why we're talking today?
Well, I'm a registered nurse of over 40 years, working with Medical Support Offshore when they expanded into the yachting industry. So it's been probably 4 or 5 years now, just overseeing and managing the U.S. territory, South America, Caribbean for our yacht clients. Um, and that's basically what I do now. I don't practice actively nursing anymore, but obviously my nursing background uh, gets put to use every day.
It sure does. I know that for sure. And so you've been, as soon as the hurricane started, you got in touch with NV Pacific Hope and Yacht Aid, and I know it sounds grim, and some people don't like talking about these sorts of things, but I know you help them get source body bags because they needed thousands.
Yes.
What's been happening? What have you been doing?
Well, first of all, South Florida was in the what we refer to here kindly as the cone of death. We were in that cone of uncertainty for quite a long time. So initially, we were not sure that we weren't going to take the full Brenton impact. Um, so after we realized that we were out of the woods and that the horror that transpired with this storm sitting over the Bahamas, the northern Bahamas, it became quickly clear instantaneously where the needs were going to be. I've worked with the Pacific Hope for several years now. It is a recommissioned Mercy ship um, that was stationed off the coast of Dominica, acting as their only hospital for the last year following Hurricane Maria, which devastated that island. I've also worked with Yacht Aid Global for many years, where they've responded to, storms in Vanuatu and the earthquake in Haiti and storms in Mexico and South America, and they've responded worldwide wherever the needs are. So they turned to me many years ago, to assist them in getting medical supplies. So how that works for us is our yacht clients, as you well know, Amanda, are all required to carry pretty massive, sized medical kits, and they have to be kept up to date. And that's part of the job that we do here at Medical Support Offshore, is keeping the meds up to date. So we're removing a lot of medicines and bandages and medical supplies that, even though they have expiry dates and the boats need to have them updated, those supplies do have a second life. And that second life has landed with us collecting them in bins and sorting them and having them ready to box up and transport when there is a need, a medical call that comes out. So that's how we got involved with these organizations and how we help, and consequently how our yacht clients actually end up helping, even though they may not necessarily know that that's what they're doing. I do try to get the word out to the yachts that we do donate a lot of the stuff that we remove from the boats. Um, so we've expanded a little bit in the last couple of years, that we are actually willing to take the soon to expire medical supplies from yachts that don't necessarily use Medical Support Offshore as their provider. Some of the other companies do not take any of those expired items. And we're happy to do that because we found a purpose and a life for it.
And can you, if you're happy to answer this question, it's a tricky one, but one question people are always asking us, and I've never been totally sure of the answer, is two questions. Is, you know, can you send the out-of-date medicines to aid countries? And from my belief, they can still work once out of date for a while. And how do you explain, that?
Well, we practice great caution. We really don't send expired medicines.
Right.
But since we restock these boats, usually in 6-month increments, a lot of the medicines that we're removing from the vessels for replacement still have 5 or 6 months worth of a shelf life left on them. And there are some medicines, even after expiration, that are not dangerous to use, particularly skin creams and lotions, things that are not used for injection or used, consumed internally. So those are much safer to use, and nobody has turned them down. So we try to weed out, the medicines that are already expired. And then once we do have still in-date medicines, we put them directly into the hands of working physicians certainly for the Pacific Hope, but also if they're going through Yacht Aid Global, they make arrangements for the transport of these medications, but they go directly from our possession into the hands of doctors or nurses. So they're not sitting on the tarmac in boxes. They're not accessible, to anybody who just wants to grab a box. We do not send narcotics at all. So those are taboo, which makes things 10 times more difficult. So that's how we do. We also work with the Catholic charities here in South Florida who run a couple of clinics for the indigent. And so in the seasons when we're not worried about storms and hurricanes and earthquakes, we do have several doctors that come over from the Catholic charities, and sometimes they'll take stuff that's soon to expire to use in their local clinics. But nothing is ever sold, so we don't collect any money for it. It's strictly donation.
That's really interesting, because I think at the moment, with so many people finishing their season, getting ready to go across the pond and head over for the winter season in the Caribbean and the States, everyone's getting their kits renewed, as you said. Some meds are still in date, which is really important for those of you that don't understand the industry and might think it sounds wasteful, is that we go where ambulances don't. So, as Becky said before, we've got so many boats going around the world and heading now from the Caribbean down to New Zealand to the America's Cup. They're upgrading their kits because they're going to be really remote. When you go through Panama, when you're down in Marquesas and Umea and the Galapagos and, right down to Antarctica, we've got clients in Antarctica now. We need to really stock these boats up, because we have a service where we're helping people do operations over the phone, over telemedicine. So that's why we have such a big overturn of drugs and why they need to stay in date. So while these guys that are in yachting that are listening to this, if they're packaging things up that we can use for aid work, what are the best things, so we don't end up having to deal with narcotics? And do you suggest they get to take the narcotics to the pharmacy for destroying, and then save us the creams, the lotions, the bandages, the antibiotic creams, and the drugs in date that aren't narcotics?
Right, the drugs in date, and really any of the drugs in date except the narcotics. We're happy to take any of them. Particularly important, it was so in Dominica, it was so in Haiti, Puerto Rico, and also I'm sure here in the Bahamas, are the injectable antibiotics. We have oral antibiotics and the pediatrics as well, the pediatric syrups, if they've got a few months left on. But the injectable Rocephin, the ceftriaxone, that Haiti had an outbreak of cholera. And if you think about in the 21st century that we have boats that were destroying, vial after vial after vial of some of the most powerful antibiotics in the world, and we've got a cholera outbreak, right off of our coast. I mean, it's ludicrous, to think that people in this day and age could possibly die from a disease that's quite preventable and treatable. It's just for lack of access. So this was really the driving force for me, is looking at just the massive waste of medications and medical supplies, that were being, dumped into, it was being dumped into water systems and into the trash. And there was such need, such grave need around the world. And it was wasteful, and it was shameful. So I decided a long time ago that I would do whatever I could on my end to try to minimize the waste and certainly maximize the assistance that we can provide around the world. And working with these wonderful organizations has really been a godsend.
Oh my God, my hair's on end. It's just so great to speak to someone, because I know it's something on so many of our minds now, with the plastic waste, the drug waste, the pharmaceuticals in our oceans. And thank you on behalf of the whole industry for being a game changer and giving some answers to some questions none of us really, knew the answers to. So getting back, you pointed about on cholera before, what are going to be the main health problems that we're going to be seeing in the Bahamas as a result of the hurricane and why? So cholera, obviously waterborne viruses are one of our biggest problems in the world. And there's that's obviously because the waterways are broken.
Right. Well, as I was telling you earlier, Amanda, that right. I mean, the response from around the world, and especially from the United States and Florida, which is, the Bahamas have been a playground for us in Florida for, as long as I can remember. So it's means a lot to us. It's very fond place for most of us. Interestingly enough, the response has just been absolutely overwhelming. I do know the Pacific Hope has told us that they are going to need continuous resupply of medical supplies because they will be staying on station and backing up the hospital in Nassau, who don't have the capacity to treat and care for people. The estimate now is about 70,000 people that have been displaced out of the northern Bahama Islands. Many people have chosen to stay. Those that are staying are going to need continuous resupply of fresh water and food, and obviously the tools that they're going to need to rebuild. I heard this morning a comment that the Bahamian government said what they need now, rather than 50 cases of green beans, is telephone poles. So that kind of redirects what people are sending for support. They don't need mountains of clothing, and they don't need mountains of children's toys, those kinds of things. This is going to be a marathon effort that's going to go on for many, many months, and in some cases even years, to rebuild these people's lives. So pallets and pallets of water have been moving in. There are several islands, Man of War, Hopetown, that have actually asked that they stop sending supplies because they're really well stocked up at this point. It's the Abaco Islands and Grand Bahama and Treasure Key that were just completely wiped off the map. There's no infrastructure at all. So really the only thing they can do is start moving people off of the island and relocating them. So getting supplies in and keeping the flow open. The response from the cruise industries, they're talking about sending cruise ships over to be used as temporary living quarters for people. Right now we're battling with the government about whether or not they're going to waive visas for people, allowing them to come and join friends or family in the United States. So there's still a lot of stuff up in the air. Medical supplies, I think really the only thing other than bringing us your med items that are usable is cash. Cash is king. You can go to mvpacifichope.org and you can go to yachaidglobal.org. And on both of those organizations' websites, you can donate. That money is being used to purchase the absolute necessary items rather than depending on what people decide to send. So all I can just, reemphasize, besides medicines and bandages, that cash is king.
Yeah, so even if everyone that watches this just pops in $5 or something, it could really make such a difference. And we'll put the links to those organisations below this and try and even set up one of those non-profit things. So all you've got to do is 1 or 2 clicks. And
Right.
And just going back to what are the main injuries that and illnesses that come from a cyclone or sorry, a hurricane like this?
A lot of broken bones, a lot of lacerations. I'm hearing from the doctors that the need, and unfortunately, by the time they're seeing these lacerations, they're already many days old. So wound care is a big deal. Fracture, dealing with fractures and sprains, in the rebuilding process, in the debris removal process. I'm sure we're going to see more and more of those kinds of injuries. People stepping on things that are, falls and fractures, those kinds of things. So I think that's the biggest need. Antibiotics, and wound care, and skin antibiotics as well, and sterile bandaging are going to be very important. They've had a huge call for dialysis machines, which of course is way beyond our ken. And I've had a number of people reach out to ask if we had insulin. Obviously, this is a problem because we don't have refrigeration. There's no way to keep it cold. And, without knowing what someone's diabetic needs are, that really isn't something that falls into our ability to help. So we have to leave that to the hospital ships and to the doctors on board, to take care of that. So I think pretty much just focusing on lacerations, fractures, infections, and wound care.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, totally agree. So,
and I can add dehydration, and sun exposure are going to be big issues as well.
And the mosquitoes,
Oh, mosquitoes, yeah. They do know several of the islands, there have been some chemical spills. There's gasoline and oil. There are bodies that are yet unrecovered. There are going to be dead animals. So it's a toxic soup in the standing water on these islands. We are certainly advising, and I advised almost immediately before the storm was really even over. I had sent out a post encouraging people to make sure that they kept themselves properly covered, gloves and masks and foot coverings, and to deal with open wounds and to report any new rashes and skin irritations immediately, diarrhea, vomiting. Try not to ingest any of that toxic water or make contact with it is going to be really important. These are just not things that people think about when they rush in and all they want to do is help, and they don't think about what they're standing in, walking in, breathing, and what that would do to them down the road.
Yeah, this is something we talk about a lot with MSOS as well, is we forget that we live in, most of us, warm, moist environments anyway. And even on a super yacht in like beautiful Mediterranean waters, you can get ill because someone's flush tank's out, or it's a heavily tourist area. So and people are always shocked. And this is one of the biggest problems we have in aid work, isn't it? Like further down the track in the next week or so, is the waterborne diseases such as cholera, and then the the extra mosquitoes and mosquito-borne illnesses as well, and then the wounds that are infected by, as you said, the muddy lagoon water, or the the mud they're walking through, or the poor quality of water they're getting through, taking back to their house
Right.
to bathe
I mean,
in.
these were sewage systems that backed up, and and so it's human and animal waste, and it really is a very, very dangerous environment. I mean, Amanda, you and I know that one of the first things that we teach, when we're doing training, I mean, it's like rule number one: protect yourself first. You're no good to anybody, if you go charging in there and you get yourself ill or injured because you didn't take care to protect the environment around you and protect yourself first. So as a first responder or a second responder or whatever, you need to make sure that you're safe in the environment in which you're going to be working.
Yeah, absolutely. And, at all times, so important. On that note, you talked about people going down there that you've been briefing and educating. For those of us on the other side of the world that are nurses and doctors or medics, who do they need staff, and can you apply, or is it only for Americans that are
Yes.
going down? How do we help?
Yeah, on the mvpacifichope.org website, there is a place where you can actually fill out an application to volunteer. The nurses and doctors there, it's all voluntary. These are not paid positions. And so people donate the time and their skills, whatever they can. And obviously they need relief. In any organization, it's usually 5% of the people do 100% of the work. So having doctors and nurses that can, donate some time and come in and out, to relieve and take over is really vitally important. Yacht Aid Global also on their website, if you're willing to volunteer time, they stay in touch with the Bahamian.
I can't hear you. Sorry, you just got muted somehow. Just go back, you were just saying through Yacht Aid, people can apply through there as well to give their time and also financial donations. So that's where, and yeah, that's where we got it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Very much encouraged.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else, any advice or anything you can say before we leave, or we also?
No, I think the only thing I can add is as I said right off the bat, the needs change daily. The precautions go out daily. It's really just staying close to the news. They do have restrictions on airspace through the Federal Aviation Administration. Small planes have to be registered. The Bahamian government has a website. It's called NEMA, NEMA, and they can log on. Anybody that's donating supplies or services or time or volunteer efforts must be NEMA approved. There are places that they just don't need people kind of getting in the way of rescue support, search and rescue. So small boats, people that want to just do something and they get in there and then they come across an environment that they weren't prepared to handle, and they become now part of a problem instead of part of the solution. So working through these organizations, which are highly organized and really have are connected to the government and the specific needs. So that's really the best thing I can do to encourage people to do it. Help where you can. Cash is king. Do what you can, but do it the right way.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, and you've inspired so many people and helped so many of us understand what's going on and think outside the box. So thanks, Becky. Thanks so much.
Amanda, thanks for using your platform to get the information out. My pleasure.
Awesome. You're off. Cheers.
Cheers,
Thanks.
babe.
Bye.
Bye.